And as you heard from his intro, my guest today on the Parakeet podcast is not a former or current player, but he's just as important as a player because without them, without a referee, you don't have a game. And that is Mr. Bill Harrigan. Bill has an amazing record in rugby league, but was also in charge of the referees for the NRL after being on field. He's one of the best-known referees the game has ever seen. Have a listen to this record. Bill has officiated in 393 first-grade games from 1986 to 2003, 25 test matches, 21 origins, 10 grand finals. Currently the general manager of Oztag Australia. You might have also heard him on the referee expert on Triple M's football commentary. You either love him or you hate him. He's one of the greatest referees to ref the game. I can't wait to hear his story. Really interested to hear it. So let's get into it. Welcome to the Parakeet podcast, Mr. Bill Harrigan.
Thank you, Troy. I got tired just listening to that. That's a lot of games.
It's an impressive record. Now, growing up in the western suburbs of Sydney, was rugby league your favourite sport to watch or play?
Yeah, it was, but no matter what sport they had at school, whether it was cricket, soccer, I just put my hand up and played. But rugby league was the weekend sport. And
did you ever play rugby league growing up?
Yeah, played right through from under sixes, right through until I was 27. Okay. I played in the police competition. So at one stage, I was refereeing first grade on the weekend in 86 and 87 and playing police rugby league on the Wednesday nights in the police comp, yeah.
Wow. What position were you?
Hooker.
Okay. Yeah,
fast hooker.
Fair enough. Who were some of the players that you used to like? Did you support a team growing up and favourite players to watch?
Yeah, growing up, I was a South Sydney supporter. I grew up in Parramatta, but I grew up Canley Heights in the Parramatta district. But when I was a little kid, 6 and 7 years of age, South Sydney were the best team. And like any kid, I wanted to be on the winner. Yeah, so I started going for the Rabbits.
Okay. Yeah, well, I started supporting Parramatta in 86, so probably the same sort of reason. Now, going through school, I should say, did you think you were going to do rugby league as a career, or was there something else on the menu that you thought you might have wanted to do as a career?
No, I had my heart set on being a pilot.
Okay.
And, but with all the sport and putting in so much effort, because I love sport, and not as much effort into the academic side, eventually my teacher said to me, you need to put more effort into the academic side if you're going to be a pilot. Okay. And so when that sort of faded away, I then decided that I'd take my second choice, which followed in my dad's footsteps and become a police officer in the New South Wales Police Force. As far as playing goes in a career, I was never that good. And then all of a sudden I found myself refereeing for some pocket money at the age of 16, 17 years of age. And all of a sudden it went on from there.
Yeah, well, as you said, you landed in the police force and you served 17 and a half years there in the police, and you had numerous roles in the tactical response group, witness security unit, and also a police negotiator. What was your favourite role that you did in the police?
Well, back in the early days, I did 2 years as a general duties officer at Central Police Station, and then they started up the new tactical response group, Riot Squad, and part of it was 2 hours training every shift. So straight away, I'm going, that's me. Again, fitness-wise, so I just said, that'll do. So I put my hand up for it, got selected. I love the camaraderie. I love the discipline. And it was risky. It was life-threatening, more so than just a general duties police officer. But that was a part of its, that was a draw card for me anyway. So I loved it, got in there, went from there to SWAS, Special Weapons Operations Section, did some stint at the Witness Security Unit and also negotiating. Which do I love the most? I loved it all.
Okay.
I loved it all, but the TRG work I did the longest, from 82 right through till 89. So that was my biggest stint and thoroughly enjoyed it.
Was there any events that stand out during your time that stick with you today?
Oh yeah, certainly there was the 1983 and especially the 1985 bike riots. Yeah. We were up at Mount Panorama with the tactical response group. Yep. Some very hairy situations happened up there. A couple of them were life-threatening. Then I've got times when I've negotiated people jumping off the gap, off the Harbour Bridge, off a building in the city, in Bathurst Street, and it's very fulfilling when you finish a job like that and it's a successful completion.
Yeah, definitely. Do you think that if refereeing didn't come along, you'd still probably be in the police force, or?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple of my mates who are out of my class have only just retired, 42 years in the cops. Yep. So I'd probably be out by now. I don't think I'd be still in there 42 years in. But yeah, I would have definitely stayed in there. And in sometimes when I think back, I probably should have gone down the path of not going full time. Not that I have any regrets, but probably could have just said to Johnny Rebo when Superleague signed me up full time that I would still like to stay part time, like some of the others end up doing later on.
Okay.
Sean Hampstead, Paul Simpkins, they were refereeing, but they also stayed 2 or 3 days in the cops, then went back to full time, and they're both still in the cops. I probably could have gone down that track and wouldn't have minded it.
Yep. Now, you mentioned there that you were refereeing and in the police both at once. That must have been pretty hard to juggle both jobs, I'd imagine.
It was, Troy. It was difficult juggling the jobs. Not only the jobs, you had to then juggle a family life.
Yep.
So I had 2 boys, a wife and 2 boys. And you're doing your 40 hours, which is intense in the cops because I was in the high pressure squads. Then you're refereeing and you're doing the training that you need to stay in top nick to referee first grade. Then everything else that goes with refereeing first grade. And then also try and find hours. Hey, I've got a family as well. Yep. And, going back in those days, it had a major effect on my family life. And, and in the end, that marriage didn't last. But then my wife now, and we've got 3 kids. We've been together since 1997. So we did still go through that very good run. You can put it that way, 97 right through to 2003 we were refereeing. But I didn't have the cops. So I didn't have that hassle of that. So, yeah.
And then it must have been pretty handy, some of those skills that you had in the police that you could take onto the field, especially like the police negotiating when it was time to deal with players on the field.
Oh yeah, I think they all sort of went hand in hand. The discipline, I just think the way my mum and dad brought me up in the first place, and then the discipline, the fitness, goes package, both with working in the squads that I was in the cops, but also refereeing and handling first grade, and then the way you've got to communicate. And so that also helped me. And I think another big thing that helped me was that I kept playing. And I played from under 6s right through till I was 27.
Yeah.
And even though I didn't play at, a high level, still being able to jump out of a footballer's shoes into a referee, and as a referee have the empathy for the player. And I think that probably lacks a little bit now because we're getting these referees that are coming in now and they're taking up the whistle at 12 years of age, 13, 14 years of age.
Yeah, okay.
And they're refereeing rather than playing. So they don't get that empathy as a player later on in life, whereas I did, and I think that had a big part as well. So when you put them all together, it's a package: communication, fitness, discipline. It's all a package.
Yeah, definitely. What about was there any of your police workmates giving you advice on a Monday about some of the decisions that you made on the weekend, or maybe even before the weekend said, "Oh, come on, Bill, give my team a hand."
You'd always get the boys. They knew that I was a Rabbitoh supporter as a kid growing up, but once I started refereeing, and there's a little story of how I adapted to being a referee, because when we're all kids, we're growing up, we don't say we want to be a professional referee.
Yes.
But because we love the game, we're definitely following a team.
Yep.
So every referee out there has followed a footy team. How do you then go on and referee and make sure that the supporting of that team for so many years as you're growing up is put to the side? And I was refereeing my first South Sydney game with North Sydney. My mum said to me, "How do you think you'll go, William, being a South Sydney supporter as you're growing up?" And I said, "Oh, we'll see, Mum." So I ran out and I refereed this game. When I come off, she said, "So how'd it go?" And I went, "Oh, I hate him. I hate him." I had Mario Fennick, Craig Coleman, Mick Podgy, Neil Baker absolutely give it to me. It was the days before microphones.
Yeah.
Absolutely give it to me. And now I'm just penalising them left, right and centre. And I come off and went, "I hate them."
Yeah.
They give it to me. So I said, "You know what, Mum? I'm going to hate them all." And that's pretty much, even though I'm saying that, not in a bad way, but I just had this attitude. I hate you all. And you're a green team, a red team, a white team, a blue team. And that's the way I continued refereeing my career. And even to today, I love watching a game of footy, but even when South are playing it, I don't sit there going, go, come on, Rabbits. It's just, okay, there's South Sydney playing. And that's what I did.
That's a pretty good way to do it. So you don't get involved in the game, I guess, sort of thing.
When you think I had the referee New South Wales versus Queensland, or the referee Australia versus Great Britain, Australia versus New Zealand. So again, just because I'm an Australian or because I was born in New South Wales doesn't mean there's any bias towards them. Yeah. That word just doesn't exist in my vocabulary.
Yeah. Well, you need that to go into the games. Well, let's get into your refereeing. How did you get involved in refereeing? How did you start as a referee?
Well, I went to Fairvale High out in Fairfield local government area, and the New South Wales Rugby League had a recruitment campaign for schoolboy referees. And Fairvale High put their hand up. And then when it came, it was the Friday assembly. And this course was supposed to start on the following Tuesday, for 5 afternoons for an hour after school. And our PE teacher, who was our footy coach, called the rugby league, the Opens Rugby League team, after the assembly together. And when we got there, we said, gentlemen, we're in an embarrassing situation. We've put our hand up to be a part of this program. We have no volunteers. So I need 5 of you to put your hand up to do this course starting next Tuesday. So we were looking at each other. Who wants to be a referee? No way in the world. And then no one volunteered. So he turned around and said, righto, if you're not going to volunteer, I'll pick you. He said, Harrigan, Smith, Lees and Gasnier. And he said, you 5 blokes will do your... He virtually picked the spine of the team.
Yeah.
I was a hooker. Mark Smith and Stephen Smith were halfback and fullback.
Mm-hmm.
Gasnier was a centre. And Brett Lees, bit of a utility player. And he's just picked us and said, you will do your referee's ticket. And we're all going, no way, sir, no chance. And he just said, if you don't, you'll sit on the bench for the next 5 weeks while this course is going ahead. So I did it. I know the 2 Smith brothers, they had a go at refereeing straight away. I grabbed mine, threw it in the drawer and said, there's no way I'm doing that. And then about 6 months later, my dad come home from the local pub, El Cortez. And he said, William, the pubs have created a pub competition. Brown Jug, Kookaburra, El Cortez, a few of the others around the area. And he said, they're putting in an A and B grade team. They need their own referee. It's $20 a game. That's $40 on a Sunday afternoon in 1977. That was the equivalent to a first-year apprentice wage.
Nice.
I turned around and said, I'm in.
Yep.
What a grounding, mate. I refereed a pub competition where there was would-bees, has-beens, could-bees. There was good stuff.
Oh, plenty of stories out of that, I'd imagine.
There was plenty of stories. They always drove the ute up with the keg and they'd spear the keg and they'd be the B grade would be drinking beers, watching the A grade. They'd be giving me lip. And then the hardest thing was at the end of the game, you had to go over to both teams and collect your $10.
Okay.
So the team that won, there you go, Billy.
Yeah.
The team that lost, you little shit. So, only $10. And then I was seen one day by a bloke came up to me and he just said, young fella, I'm from the Referees Association, Parramatta. I've been watching you the last couple of weeks. I'd like to invite you to referee in the Parramatta district. I just said, do you pay? And they said, yeah, there is match fees. And I said, okay, I'm in. Where do I sign up? And that's how it all started. And from there, I just rose through the ranks.
That's right. Well, your first grade debut was at Lidcombe Oval, Cronulla and West. I usually ask the players, do they remember their first grade debut? So I'll ask you, what was your first grade debut like? And was refereeing first grade everything you thought it was going to be like?
Well, when I first went into refereeing, even when I signed up with Parramatta District, it was still about the pocket money for me and not about making a career out of it. And it wasn't until one day I refereed a Ryde Eastwood game and the assessor came to me at the end of the game to give me my assessment. And then he just said, young fella, I think you got the ability to go all the way. And I looked at him and said, all the way where? And he said, all the way to first grade. And I went, wow. And I walked away, and that was that light bulb moment.
Yep.
Where I turned around and went, hey, maybe I can make a go of this. So anyway, so I worked hard and did the 82 grand final in the Parramatta district. Got an invite to grade 83, got graded, and and then just climbed through the ranks.
Yep.
And to get that first grade call up, it's like any player. It's the ultimate. When you've set your target, I want to play first grade, or I want to referee first grade, and then you get the call up. And then I'm on the phone to my mum and dad and said, look, I've just got the call up, I'm going. And even for me, it was the bottom of the table clash. If you go back and have a look at the 19th of May, 1986, and look at the competition table, Western Suburbs and Cronulla are down the bottom. It didn't matter to me. It was first grade. I'd made it. I'm running out on the Lidcombe Oval at 3:00. How good was this? And it didn't let me down. I loved it. I loved it. It was fantastic stuff.
Also, well, 3 years later, you're selected to be in control of your first grade grand final in 1989. Some would say the greatest grand final ever between the Raiders and the Tigers. How did you find out you were the referee, and who was the first person you told?
Again, that was a phone call that came from Dennis Braybrook. And Dennis Braybrook back then was the boss. I hadn't refereed a grand final. I hadn't done a third grade or a reserve grade. I'd been standby to Mick Stone 2 years earlier. When he was doing his first grade, he had 3 first grades under his belt. Kevin Roberts had 3 before him. I was competing against those 2 blokes, plus Greg McCallum and Graham Annesley. And when we got down to the nitty gritty and there was just 2 of us, I thought they'll give it to Mick Stone. Why wouldn't you? He's had 3 in a row. He's the most experienced out of the 2 of us. If he gets the game and he stuffs it up, they say, well, we put our most experienced bloke in there. What do you want? You put me in there and I stuff it up. They go, well, how did you put this inexperienced bloke who's never refereed a grand final before in any grade, And I thought it's an easy decision for them. Anyway, when I got the call from Dennis Braybrook to say congratulations from it and John Quayle to say I'd got the game, mate, it was just unbelievable. Unbelievable. Here I go. And then to go out by getting that grand final, I win my grand final in the week leading up because I beat Mick Stone. I become the number 1 referee for the year. But you've got to finish it off. Yep. I still had to go out there and make sure it was a good game so no one was talking about me and I was talking about the footy. And fortunately, what a game. Yeah. Extra time. It had everything in it. And, to just be a part of it and to be my very first grand final and the youngest referee to do a grand final at that stage, I just walked off saying, can it get any better than this?
You just mentioned there the week leading up, you already had won because you were the referee in charge. For a player, grand final week can be pretty intense with a lot of media and training. What's it like for a grand final referee the week leading up to the game? Is that the same and intense? Because you don't usually see the ref until on game day. Yeah,
it's a little intense, but as you said, once I got that phone call on the Tuesday, Bill, you've got congratulations, you got the grand final. It's like, oh, wow, you beauty. And it'd be like the player at full time, the winning team. So the player who wins at full time when that siren goes and the whistle goes,
yep,
he goes, yes, we've won. And you saw Glenn Lazarus and the look on his face in that at the end of that game. Well, for me, that was Tuesday. So the rest of the week was, okay, let's just keep training hard. Let's not do anything different. Albeit the game is going to be different. It's going to be a lot more intensity and everything. It's a grand final.
Yep.
But I've got to still keep my feet on the ground, train like I would normally train, eat, sleep, do everything that I would normally do, and then prepare and go out there and do the best that I can and make sure I come off absolutely gassed.
Yep.
So I got nothing left and say I did everything I could do. And that's pretty much what I did.
Yep.
So I didn't have that intense feeling like the players do when they're waiting in anticipation. Here we go. We got to win. I'd already won.
Yeah, that's it. Well, I've got a listener question from a G Jack of Balmain. And he'd like to ask you the question, when Benny Elias was setting up for that field goal, how come he didn't penalise Ricky Stewart for being offside or a third marker?
Yeah, I could say the same thing. Why didn't I penalise Gary Freeman when the ball bounced back off the goalpost?
Yeah.
Because he was the first one who jumped up and touched the ball.
True.
And it was in front of him. And so he was offside. Now, for my friend Jack there, let's just go through a couple of things. Benny Elias kicks that ball an inch higher, Balmain win the game. If their captain, Wayne Pearce, doesn't have the worst game of his career and has the best game of his career, they win the game. If McNeil had just been able to hold out for another foot, 6 inches after an ankle tap, you win the game. If Garry Jack catches the ball at full time, you'll win the game. And if your coach doesn't replace 2 of your best forwards with a significant amount of time to go, you win the game. Next question.
Well, he also mentioned the Bruce Maguire tap penalty as well.
That's the one. That's the one that they always ask me about, the Bruce Maguire penalty, why that was a penalty. And even Warren Ryan, still when I have a chat with him, says, Billy, it was the first time I've seen it and it's the last time I've seen it. And I go, and there should have been a hell of a lot more.
That's one of the rules I'd like to see come back, actually, the tap and go with no markers. But
yeah, well, there's nothing worse than when you see that was a dummy half when Maguire took the ball from dummy half, ran forward. Walters was running back on side, didn't want any part of the game, wasn't trying to interfere.
Yeah.
Yet Maguire ran up, grabbed him by the jersey and used him as an obstruction. Went one side, player come around, pushed him inside, ran away and got an advantage. You still see that sometimes today. A player gets up, he's running back, and yet the dummy half or someone runs up and runs into him, trying to milk the penalty.
Yeah,
and yet the player's got nothing to do with the game. I just think that should be a deliberate act and should be penalised.
Yeah, for sure. Is the 89 grand final the favourite one that you refereed out of the 10 that you did?
Yeah, and I think for those reasons we've already mentioned, it was my first. I was the youngest, and it was a great game.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and that's not taking anything away from the others. So you go into 90 and 91, Canberra versus Penrith. Brilliant games, absolutely brilliant. Canberra win the 90, Penrith win 91, which was exciting. Then you go to 99 and you've got St. George and the Storm and the penalty. And then you go to 2002, Warriors and the Roosters in a cracker. They're all great for me.
Yeah, for sure.
But that 89 was probably just edges the others out.
Yeah. Now, my favourite musical artist is Jimmy Barnes. And I believe you got a funny story about him and your old boss, Eric Cox. Tell myself and the listeners about that one.
Yeah, doing a State of Origin at the Sydney Football Stadium. And Jimmy is doing the pre-match. And when you're at the Sydney Football Stadium, there's not a lot of area for you to warm up. No. So I used to just warm up and down the tunnel. So I'd walk down to the bottom and I'd sprint back up. The referee's room's up the top, goes down around the corner, and that exits then out into the main foyer area. So they brought Jimmy Barnes in through that way, and he's standing just outside my change room.
Yep.
And I'm warming up. Eric Cox is down the bottom of the tunnel near the sideline. And Jimmy pulls out a bottle of scotch, has a bit of a swig, gargles, and then screams. So he's just warming up. He's doing exactly what I'm doing. I'm warming up. He was warming up for his couple of songs. And it was loud. And he was screaming at the top of his voice. Anyway, Eric come walking up, put the big march on, and he's going, who the F is that? Who does he think he is? And he come walking up. So there's Jimmy, obviously his minder producer, whoever it is, and a couple of other people in his band. And he comes up and he turns around and he goes, who is making that effing noise? And he goes, is that you? And Jimmy's standing there. He looks at his producer and he's going, look, who's this bloke? And Coxie was scary. Okay. And Coxie said, my referee is here warming up and he's got to listen to you screaming out all that noise. And this lady turns around and says, this is Jimmy Barnes. He is the pre-match entertainment. I don't give a stuff who he is. He'll be at that door. This is the bloke that needs to be looked after. I don't want to hear that. I'm going, Eric, it's okay. It's okay. And he goes, it's not okay. You won't do that again. Turned around, wolfed off and went there. I looked at Jimmy with it. I said, mate, go for it. I'm okay.
Yeah, well, as you said, like you love your music, so you would have known who he was, and you wouldn't have cared. That's what he does.
Yeah, and I've bumped Jimmy a couple of times since over the years, and we've always had a bit of a laugh about that. Funny story.
Yeah, good stuff. Now, you become the number one referee in the game before the Superleague War, but the Superleague War rears its ugly head. And I've asked all the players that were playing around that time, how difficult a time was that for yourself during that Superleague time?
It was probably difficult for us referees because it was an unknown for us. There was a lot of hoo-ha about signing up teams and players, but no one had mentioned the referees.
Yep.
And it was probably a good 3 weeks after both sides had been signing up clubs and spruiking that they will have the best competition. And I remember saying to Brian Grant, they've got no idea. The best competition is going to be the competition that has the best referees. And no one's even looked at us referees. They're even out signing up young schoolboy kids that may go on to have a career.
Yep.
And they're forking them. And identified future talent, and yet nobody's talking to the referees. And he actually knew John Rebo, so he made a call to John Rebo to set up a meeting. And then in the same breath, the ARL came out at Lidcombe Oval, sat us all in the grandstand and said, right, all your referees, there's contracts downstairs. It's all been tailored to your experience or whether you're a referee or a touch judge. Go down there, sign your contracts. I'll see you all back up here. That was Mick Stone addressing us. I went down there. They were offering me $50,000. They were offering me $5,000 for 5 years to be loyal to the ARL.
Yeah.
And I said, mate, you've left a zero off this. If they'd have given me $50,000, I probably would have said, oh, that's okay, I'll sign it. Because at that stage, I think we're on about $300 a game. And they were signing up players for a ridiculous amount, $750,000 a year for 3 years, all that sort of thing. And that's what Superleague and were doing. And this is what we were offered. So I just refused to sign it. Oh, look, $1,000 a year to be loyal?
Yeah. No.
You're kidding me.
Yeah.
And then John Rebo set up a meeting and then away we went. And even their first offer, the initial offer, was rubbish, absolute rubbish. And then after we said, mate, there's no way we're going to leave. I'm not going to leave 18 years in the cops on a sergeant's wage, plus around $15,000 that I was getting from refereeing to go and sign up for that. You're going to have to do a lot better than that. They did do better than that. They gave me a 5-year contract. They did a little bit better than that. Nowhere near.
Yeah.
Like some of the players still got more in 1 year than I got over 5 years.
Yeah.
But it was something I wanted to do. And I knew it, as we go back to one of the first questions you asked me, the juggling, cops and refereeing and family was just taking its toll. So I went, yeah, I'm going to take this because I can just concentrate on refereeing and family.
Yeah.
And that's why I went.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's most of the players that I've spoken to, they've said that they just signed up with the club because they wanted to play footy with their mates. But as you just said, it's a little bit different for the referees because they're sort of by themselves sort of thing, if you know what I mean. They've got to look after themselves. So now there's a few incidents in first grade that you were the referee of, and I just want to get your side of things. And the first one that comes to mind is the late immortal who we lost not that long ago, Mr. Bob Fulton, in the game at Caltex Field. And it was a cement truck comment. How did you feel at that time? Because that was early on in your career. And how long was the relationship Frosty for? And did you become mates after you retired?
Yeah, so I'll take it backwards on your three questions. I would take that last one first. Yes, we did become not mates. We're having barbecues and everything, but we certainly got on. Yeah, and were able to talk and have a chat and have a cup of coffee out together, no problem. It was back early, and because I'd only just gone into first grade, to cop that so early, I think was a good thing, a dead set positive thing for me, because I learned how to handle a lot of publicity. Because here I am thrown in the first grade, and then all of a sudden I'm on the front page, back page for days because of this comment by the Australian coach and a legend in the game. So, and it all happened because it was back in the good old days when the ball had to go in the middle of the scrum, halfback feeding it. Yep. And Des Hasler was the halfback, and he kept feeding it in the second row. And I said to him, mate, you do that one more time and I'll penalise you and I'll put you in the bin. And he just looked at me and went, whoosh, as if to sort of say, well, let's see you. Threw it in the second row. I've gone bang, penalty. You can go to the bin. Cronulla ended up winning against the 12 men. And when I'm walking off, there's Fulton standing at the tunnel. And as I walk past him, he says, I hope you get run over by a truck. I hope it's a cement truck. And I looked at him, gave him a bit of a smile and just kept walking. My dad was there. He was fuming. My dad wanted to go down and put one on his chin. Yeah. And then as I'm leaving the ground with my dad, I just said to him, oh, Dad, it's one of those things. He said, no, how dare he? And I went, Dad, it's just let it be. And then the next day it's front page, and the day after it's back page, and it's all over the place. And you just had to learn to adapt and handle it. So that happened. Yeah,
part of the game. Now, the second one is again at Cronulla, Caltex Field or Endeavour Park or whatever name it was at the time. But the send-off of Phil Gould from the sideline, I don't think we've ever seen that before, and we definitely haven't seen it since. What was that all about?
Yeah, I hadn't seen it either. But I was refereeing the game, Penrith versus Cronulla, and I heard this yelling out from the sideline, and there was a bit of foul language as well. And it kept going for a little bit, and then I ended up saying to my touch judge, Keith Gegg, I said, "Who's that yelling out?" And he turned around and said, "It's the Penrith coach." I went, "Really? Who's he yelling that at?" And he went, "You." I went, "Oh, what?" Anyway, then go down further down the field, and I blew a penalty to Penrith. And next minute I hear this coach again giving me a gobful and yelling out and dropping a few expletives. And I've turned around and said, "Is that Gould again, the coach?" And he said, "Yeah, that's him." And I said, "And he's yelling out at me again." And he went, "Yeah, he is." And I went, "Oh, stop the game." And that's when I went over and said, "Coach, you want to yell out at me? That's fine. But you're going to do it with the punters because they can yell out at me, but they're on the other side of the fence. You jump on the other side of the fence too." He just said, "I'm not going anywhere." And I said, "Well, we don't play until you go." End of story. And away he went. And the same thing with Gus. We've had our, especially when he went from when he was Canterbury after that, we certainly had our little dust ups. We had a good dust up in 1989 when he was Canterbury coach.
Yeah.
But all in all, we get on fine over the years as well.
Yeah, no, it was one to remember. The last one is when my club, Parramatta Eels, were playing Newcastle, and I think 3 Eels players were binned that night. I think it was Michael Buhner got binned twice, and Hindy as well. Was that part of the crackdown of some description that night?
No, that was my crackdown.
Okay.
And I work with Mick Buhner. He works at Oztag. He's my coaching director.
Yeah.
I refereed the game 4 weeks earlier down at Parramatta, and Newcastle got a roll on and ended up rolling over the top of Parramatta and left them in their wake. And then the following week, when we were up there in Newcastle started to get a roll on again. And I heard the Parramatta players saying, hold them down, don't let them get up. And they were holding him down too long. Anyway, I've blown a penalty, and then I called out the captain. I said, I'm hearing you say, hold him down, don't stuff him, hold him down. He doesn't like giving penalties. He won't keep blowing his whistle. Well, that was like a red flag to a bull.
Yeah, definitely.
And I said, you do that, I'm going to penalise you again. I'm going to put somebody else in the bin. And it was just like, as they walked away, it was like, stuff him, keep doing it. Oh, bang, next tackle, they went in there, you can go too. Mickey Buhner went for the second time because he gave my touch judge a bit of a gobful.
Okay.
And touch judge reported him. And then Mick said, I wasn't talking to you, Bill. And I said, yeah, but he's got the same shirt on as I have, so you can go and have another 10. Yeah. That's why you copped 2 in the bin.
You guys laugh about it these days?
That was pretty much it. Yeah, we have a laugh about it. And, on that night, Peter Louis was the coach, referee's coach, and obviously an ex-Parramatta coach as well. And Pete came into the room at the end of it, and he goes, wow, I've never seen it like that, Billy. Has that ever been done before? And I said, well, yeah, I refereed Manly versus North Sydney at North Sydney Oval one day, and I had 2 sent off, including Martin Bella, 2 sent off, 4 in the bin during that game. I said, so, yeah, it's happened before. And he goes, good as gold, mate, good job. See you later. He left. Monday morning, I'm getting a call into the office. So there's Peter Louis, Brian Grant, the 2 referees coaches with Annesley. And they said, talk us through it. I talked them through it. And then they said, well, we're going to let you have a bit of a rest this week because of the media and everything. Give you a bit of a, hide you away a little bit. And I said, no, that's BS. You dropped me. You're dropping me. Yeah. Yet the other night you're saying great work, and now I'm getting dropped. This is a lot of BS. Yeah. And I said to Graham, who refereed for many, many years with me, I said, Graham, you wouldn't have put up with that. If you had heard the same as I did, mate, Graham's response was, well, maybe you should have binned, warned, been warned, been warned, rather than just go bang, bang, bang. And I went, okay, lesson learned.
Yeah, no, fair enough. What was it like refereeing Parramatta during your career? Were they good to referee, or were they difficult?
When I first came into first grade in '86, I was very, very fortunate and very humbled and honoured to have come in and refereed Parramatta with the likes of Ray Price, Cronin, Sterling, Kenny, Ella in that team, and Steve Edge. And I'm sitting back there going, wow, here I am, a kid growing up in Parramatta, watching Parramatta teams play. And here I am now refereeing first grade with these blokes in it. It was just sensational. Unfortunately, Price and Cronin retired at the end of 86.
Yep.
But still, that legacy of having been able to referee those blokes, and Eric Grace, which I always thought Eric Grace the best winger I've ever refereed. And now, even to this day, I jump up on stage and sing a couple of tunes with Eric Gray from the Gurus.
Yeah, he actually said to say hi. And he actually had a question. He goes, where do you get your exuberance for playing live music with the Gurus? Because it's so infectious. And they love having you up on stage with them.
Yeah, it's been really good. And it all come about because we did one of those State of Origin P&O cruises.
Okay, yeah.
And I was on there with Freddie Fittler and Steve Price from Queensland, a couple of other blokes, Scotty Prince and that. And we end up with, doing all the dinner and having drinks and mingling with people and everything. And at the end of the night, we went back up to this little bar area, and there's Eric and the Gurus playing. And they started playing Sweet Home Alabama, which is my go-to song for karaoke. I just said, hey, Eric, can I have a go? And he said, yeah, Billy, come on up. And by that time, I was very intoxicated. Forgot the second verse, all about the Neil Young part.
Yeah.
Completely forgot that, completely stuffed it up, finished the song off. And then the next day I said to Eric, hey, listen, I was pretty ordinary last night. You reckon I could have another crack at it? And he said, yes. And I've been having a crack at it with him for 4 or 5 years now. Yeah,
no, great bloke, Eric Grace Senior and Junior. Had them both on the podcast. Great guys. Always have time for the fans and love it. Is it more difficult being in charge or more pressure being in charge of an Origin game than, say, a test match or a grand final or even like a club rivalry game, or basically all games are sort of like the same?
No, because a club game with a bit of rivalry, your St George versus Cronulla, your Penrith versus Parramatta, wherever there's a bit of rivalry, they can turn into some really classic games.
Yeah.
As far as when you categorise them, you would think that by refereeing in a test match, Australia versus Great Britain, or even if you're doing Great Britain versus New Zealand, a test match representing your country, because every time I ran out there, I'm still representing Australia as a referee. You'd think that'd be the pinnacle to become a test referee. And you probably still got to look at that. Okay. State of Origin was quick, and I'll give you an analogy in a second. But for was the career of the you're competing against all these other referees to get the grand final. When you get the grand final, you can say, well, I'm the number one referee for that year in the game at that time.
Yep.
And and fortunately, all my grand finals were really good games. Like even the one where Parramatta got beat against Newcastle.
Yep.
And they were the favourites. Newcastle went out to a quick lead, but Parramatta came storming home and probably just ran out of time.
Yep.
So all the grand finals I've refereed have been really close and really good games. So I've always looked at them as being the pinnacle for me to go out. And then you go and do a State of Origin. And if you get a really good, and I had a lot of close State of Origin games and games where I just do 1 or 2 penalties. So the game was just racing up and down at a frenetic speed. And I always use the analogy, the difference. A first grade game is like driving your own car around Mount Panorama Bathurst. State of Origin is like getting into a V8. It's that much different.
Yeah.
You can't blink. If you get left behind in a State of Origin game, you're playing catch up the rest of the game and you won't perform, whether you're a player or a referee.
Yeah.
So you look forward to those games because of the speed, and you've got probably 36 of the best players in the world participating.
Yep.
You've got to say, well, how good is this? But I have refereed some test matches, which I'm thinking that was worse than a club game.
Okay.
And then I've added some other absolute classics like the 1994 third test at Leeds, Australia versus Great Britain, 1-1 decider, sensational game. So you never know.
Yeah, that's it. Now, when you decide to retire from being a referee and return back to, say, everyday life, how did you find that transition? Was it difficult for you, and were you wondering what you were going to do next?
I was wondering because I'd given away the police and I couldn't go back to the cops, and I'd been a career cop since I came out of school. So I'm starting to think, okay, what do I do? I ended up doing a year with, in 2004, I did a year with the Roosters, as their consultant, which I noticed quite a lot of the clubs now have got a referee consultant.
Yeah.
I came back to work for Perry Haddock with Australian Oztag, and I've been with him ever since. Even though I did go back with the referees, I was still doing some part-time stuff for him, and now I'm back here full-time with him. So it was strange, but what I also found strange was not having to do the same sort of training. I missed the camaraderie, the training with the boys, ready to go out and referee. But then I remember I'm sitting with two of my boys at State of Origin at Homebush in 2004, and I got a bucket of chips and a coffee, and it's 20 minutes before kickoff. And I turned to my boys and said, "This is all wrong." And they said, "What is, Dad?" And I'm saying, "I'm sitting here. I've just refereed the last 12 straight, and now I should be warming up, ready to come out again. And here I am with a coffee and chips." And that was probably the only time that I actually thought about comeback.
Yeah.
And then that was quickly washed away when I thought, what else have I got to achieve? I've done everything. I'm only going to come back and get punters from behind the post saying, "You should have stayed retired, you old bastard." So there was nothing to gain. So I just, okay, I'm done.
Was it difficult watching that State of Origin game then? How did you get through that one?
It was difficult watching it. It was difficult seeing the week in, week out. It was difficult watching the grand finals because I'd refereed 7 straight, and here's the 8th one, and I'm not there. But again, starting to look at other things and take my mind off other things. You just get through it. But there's a hole. I think all the players, I think if you ask any player that's retired, there's a bit of a hole in them because you just come out of that structure, the discipline, the training, the camaraderie, and all of a sudden that's all changed, and that's been a big part of your life. And then to try to adapt, you're missing. It's like there's a hole in you for a while, but eventually closes and away you go.
Well, you mentioned just before there that you were the head of the referees for the NRL. Was that was it more stressful being on the field as a referee or being in charge of all the referees in the NRL?
I go back. I was very excited when I got the job in 2011. I'd been the assistant coach for Robert Finch for a number of years. I got the head job, and 2011 was terrific. Probably some would say it's your honeymoon year. Everything went well. 2012, worst year of my life. When I was on the field refereeing, it was my problem. And if I didn't do a good game, it was Bill Harrigan copped it. Not Dennis Braybrook or Mick Stone or somebody else who were the bosses.
Yeah.
When I was a video referee, if I stuffed up, it was my problem. I wore it. But when I became the referee's boss, it was my problem with every referee. Every video referee that made a mistake, every referee that made a mistake, all of a sudden it was my name and I was copying it left, right and centre. And that was unprecedented compared to, so answer to your question, what was worse? It was worse being a referee's boss. I copped it a hell of a lot more, and it was more intense, more scrutiny, because I just had blame for every decision out there by the referees, and it was my fault. Yet when I was refereeing, it was my fault, not the coaches.
Yeah. Well,
I made the mistake. So
we still see that today too, to be honest. The referee's boss still gets the blame and not the single referee.
Well, look at this, Troy. I haven't been involved in watching the game as much this year as in previous years and everything, but I reckon I could count on my hand the amount of times I've heard the name Jared Maxwell, referee's boss. But when I was there, you would have counted on your hand 5 times a week.
Yeah.
I don't hear about Jared Maxwell. If there's a mistake, it's the bunker. It's the person in the bunker, or it was that referee. Very rarely do I hear Jared Maxwell. So, you go back, probably I got to wear it. It was the profile, and I was an easy target back then because of the profile. So, someone said to me, "Bill, would you come back and do it again?" Absolutely not. I actually said to Jared Maxwell at the beginning of this year when I met him at a function, and I congratulated him on the job. And I said, "Mate, it's a poison chalice. I wish you all the best. And if you're thinking about ringing me up to help in assessing or doing anything, don't do it.
Yeah.
I'm not interested."
No. Well, one of those things you did after retirement was work with Triple M as the referee expert. How did you find that? What was it like working with Gordy after the State of Origin game in 2000?
I loved it. I did 7 years with Triple M. I did 5 years doing the 4 nights, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And then the last 2 years I just did the Sunday again because it was taking too much of my family time and stuff. But I loved it. I just, again, love the camaraderie. with Gordy, the banter on and off, like Gordy and I are best mates.
Yeah.
And the banter that we would have while we're on air. Sometimes you turn around and say, I've had enough of you. I'm going to put one on your chin. And I'd go, yep. And you'll probably knock me out. But boy, I'm going to throw one hard at you too. And we just have this banter as we muck around. And then we'd be in the pub up the road having beers after we got off air. It was a good time. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, no, it was certainly good listening. And the other thing you did, or one of the other things you did, is with former guest, the big man, Daryl Broman, your ads for lows. How fun were they to do?
Yeah, they were good, and I'm actually still doing lows.
Okay, yeah.
They got me back. I had a 10-year hiatus.
Right, okay.
And then they got me back. And when they got me back, I thought, why? Like, I did 10 years with you. I've been out of it for 10 years, and you've called me back. I don't get it. Anyway, then they pulled out the rack of the clothes and I went, I get it. I said, I get it. I'm now an old man. I had the old diamond cardigan.
Yeah.
The diamonds all over. I said, that's something that my dad would wear. So I said, so maybe I'm the old man. They said, we'd prefer to call you the classic man, Bill. So if you go on the Lowe's catalogue on the internet, you'll see that I'm still there modelling the classic man clothes, and I love it.
Oh, well,
still good.
There you go. Yeah, well, I think Big Bart's been doing it for 30 odd years or something like that. It's certainly good. What was it like being a referee?
I did my very first one.
Yeah.
I was going to say, Troy, I did my very first Lowe's ad with Blocker Roach, Peter Sterling, and it was and Fatty Vorton in 1991.
Okay.
So
wow.
30 years up. Yeah.
There you go. Special
anyway, still there. Next question.
Yeah, that's it. What was it like being a referee in Gladiator, the TV show, with Hammer and with Mark McGaw and Big Vulcan?
Yeah, that was good. I enjoyed that. That was something else that sort of come out of left field. I actually got a call to go into the very first series of Dancing with the Stars.
Okay.
And I couldn't make the time frame that they gave me. I had a couple of things on and I couldn't do it.
Yep.
And so I passed on that. And then later on, I turned around and went back to them and just said, look, Dancing with the Stars was a success. It was very good. And it was about 3 or 4 series later. I said, I'm happy to have a crack at this again. And they said, no, we've got something else in mind for you. And it was 2007. And then I got the call to say, mate, we want you to come in for a casting for the referee's role in Gladiators. I went in there and did that. My daughter was born. The doctor did a cesarean, planned cesarean. Did it early in the morning so I could go off to do the casting later on in the day. So my daughter Billy was born on the day that I did the casting for Gladiators.
Oh, nice memory. Now, these days, let's talk about your Oztag, because you're the general manager of Oztag Australia. How did Oztag come into your life?
If you remember, Perry Haddock played for Cronulla, Illawarra, St George halfback. He lives around the corner from me. Still lives in the same house.
Okay.
And he's just around the corner from me, and he used to come around and say good day on that occasion. But one day he turned up way back in the early 90s and he said, Billy, I've got this idea. He was the St George third grade coach. He said, I've got this idea. Recreational game based on rugby league, but without the tackling. I need you to keep it secret, but I would like you to help me with the rules. And so he explained it all to me. We sat there a couple of nights having a beer, wrote the rules, which were pretty similar to rugby league rules, but they had to have some, changes.
Yep.
And so Oztag was born. Now, I didn't have anything to do with it except later on in the year, so I could see that there was a Oztag competition in Cronulla. And then in 1998, Perry said, mate, could you come back and help me recruit and train referees for my Oztag? So I went back and did 1 day a week.
Yep.
And then while I was doing that 1 day a week from 98, he kept saying to me, when are you going to retire? I want to have a break and I'd like you to run the game. And I said, mate, 1 day, I still got too much to do.
Yep.
Just after I retired, a day after I retired in 2003, I got a phone call from Perry saying, I just seen you retired. Now you're working for me. And I've been with him ever since.
Okay. What do you enjoy the most about Oztag, the game?
Well, it is rugby league without the tackling. And for those that don't know what Oztag is, it's rugby league being played with tags velcroed on the shorts.
Yep.
Take the tag off, simulates a tackle. So being involved with the game. And then I suppose it's local for me, but also having that opportunity to have a job where I'm in a sport that I love, but also have the flexibility of being outdoors when I need to be outdoors, running competitions, that sort of thing. So all those factors just made it a job where I said, yeah, I really like this. I can handle it. And so I've stuck with Perry. And even when I did come back to the referees as assistant coach and coaching full-time in 11 and 12, I was still allowed to do tournaments for Oztag.
Okay.
And that's how I stayed in touch with Perry. And then after 2012, when I finished with the league, he just turned around and said, mate, your job's there if you want it. And away I went again.
How difficult has it been lately in the last 18 months for the game of Oztag during these COVID times?
Yeah, that's been difficult. No community sport. But for me, it was mainly about contingency plans.
Yeah.
Making sure that all our license holders out there that run the competitions in the different areas had the tools that they needed as far as COVID plans, risk assessments, all that sort of thing, and then guiding them through the return to sport. As far as the big tournaments go, it was a matter of completely changing how we did our tournaments.
Yep.
And from bringing in COVID disciplines, COVID plans, only a certain amount of people in a certain area. So we end up zoning. So we've never done that before. We've just had one big area at Coffs Harbour. Everyone's walked all over it.
Yep.
All of a sudden I had zones, a certain amount of people in them. So certain divisions played in that zone in the morning, then they left. Other divisions came in the afternoon. So completely changed. And the positive out of that was a lot of the players, most of them, 99%, turned around and said, hey, Bill, we love this. And when we go back to normal, can we stick to doing the zones and either play in the morning or play in the afternoon instead of being there all day? And so it's worked out quite good as far as that goes. So there is positives.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's good to hear.
We're just eagerly awaiting the return now. There's a bit of light at the tunnel.
Yep.
And we're just eagerly awaiting for them to say, right, we're going back to community sport.
Yeah, well, hopefully it's not too far away. Certainly been a difficult time for everyone, but yeah, as you said, definitely community sport. I've just got some common, I call them common league questions, and they're generally, common league questions for players. So I've got a bit of a twist for yourself being the referee. Was there a favourite ground that you used to love refereeing at?
Sydney Football Stadium.
Yep.
Yeah.
Was there a least favourite ground that you didn't like refereeing at for whatever reason?
Anywhere where they threw things at me.
That's a fair answer.
I didn't like going to Leichhardt Oval, and not because of the ground as far as the spectators and that sort of thing. Just getting out of the joint, getting into the joint was a nightmare. So I really disliked that. And when I used to go there with Triple M and call, I would park in Norton Street over the other side of the expressway and do that, 1.5, 2 kilometre walk in, just so I didn't have to go down there and get stuck in the traffic and take an hour and a half to get out of the joint. I also loved the old Lang Park when I refereed State of Origin. 91, I refereed my first State of Origin up there, the old Lang Park, before it becomes Suncorp Stadium. And that place, no matter, it could have 40,000 people there, and it was like having 100,000 people at Homebush. It was, they were that noisy, they were that parochial. It was a great place to referee.
Yeah, it's definitely good old ground, especially back in those Origin days before it became Suncorp. I asked the players who was the hardest hitter they played against, but for yourself being a referee, who was the hardest player to referee? Well, maybe one that you saw the draw and you go, oh no, not him again.
Pound for pound, the toughest footballer to pull on a boot, I reckon, has been Jeff Tuvey.
Yep.
Little bloke, got smashed, gets back up again. He's like that tub thumping song, I get knocked down, I get up again.
Yep.
He was brilliant, but what a pain in the arse. Oh, fair income. He would whinge and bitch about every decision. I even gave Manly a penalty at a scrum one day and he blew up. He was a halfback and he heard the whistle go and he blew up at me. And I turned around and looked at him and said, mate, the penalty's your way. And I'm pointing that way. And I said, you got the penalty. And he said, well, save that spray for the next one. So when you'd see that you had him, other blokes were like, in a good way, Gary Freeman, Craig Coleman, because they were just like that at you all the time.
Yeah.
Just testing you all the time and chipping at you all the time. But I liked them. They weren't bad blokes.
Must be a halfback thing, maybe.
Could be a halfback thing. And then as far as when you said hardest hitters, boy, when you saw or when you see Gillespie, Trevor Gilmeister, Steve Folkes, the way and Ronnie Gibbs, and the way those guys used to just go in and tackle was, wow. I would not be on the end of that.
No, you'd have the front row seat, wouldn't you, being on the field there?
You could hear the gristle.
Hear them, yeah.
Yeah. You could hear the gristle and the muscle and bone. Just, yeah.
Yeah, those bunch of names.
And then a big favourite, Mal Meninga, just being up close and personal to watching him in full flight and seeing the fear on the defensive line coming at him.
Yeah,
was sensational to be at too, which back in those days you wouldn't pick up because the camera's a little bit different now with all their technology and how sharp they are. They can pick all those sorts of things up. But back then, that was privy to us on the field close to him.
Oh, definitely. As I said, front row seat. Now, you refereed some champion players during your career, but is there someone that you would have loved to have had the chance to referee, or is there someone even now that's playing that you would have loved to have had the chance to referee?
Yeah, I think being up close to Tedesco and the Trbojevic brothers and the way they play to be on the field, because so when you're refereeing blokes like Andrew Johns and Wally Lewis and that, you would hear what they were saying to their players. You would hear their calls. Yeah. You could see what they were doing, not knowing what they were going to do, but then later on you'd see what they were actually planning and the plays that they were planning. And I think to be up close and personal with blokes that I just mentioned, which Tedesco's, and Cooper Cronk, Billy Slater, Cameron, blokes like that, I would love to have still been out there refereeing those guys. I don't think Cameron Smith would have got away with as much as what he did had him and I come up, face to face. But I think there would have still been that mutual respect there.
Yeah, no, fair enough. He sort of saw himself as a bit of a referee, didn't he?
Yeah, and I don't blame him for that, because if you can do it and get away with it, and that's what Gary Freeman used to always try and do.
Yeah,
why not?
Exactly.
Gary Freeman used to say, Billy, I don't know if you had a late night, you're on the grog, you had a fight with your missus, or you had a good night. He said, so I'm going to test you every week. Every week I got you, I'm going to test you just to see if I can get something. Yeah. And, so you got to pay. That's fine. That's what you do. But I used to say to him, but when you know I'm on my game, mate, stop, bail out.
Yeah, I don't want to hear it.
That's why I don't blame Cameron Smith.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned Jeff Tuvey just before being a bit of a pest. What about did you ever hear any sledges from the crowd about your refereeing?
Not so much the independent. You always heard the old, your mother wears army boots, or I know where you live, and all that sort of rubbish that goes on. But mainly when you're out there and you're concentrating so much and you're so focused, it's a necessary noise. You really want a crowd. You want them cheering, booing, yelling, because it all creates and adds to the atmosphere. But it just becomes one big blur of noise. And you don't really, the only time you really hear something is when you're standing behind a kicker near the fence. He's lining up his shot for goal.
Yeah. And
then you just get some bloke with that voice happens to say that one thing, and you'll hear that. And sometimes it's brought a smile on my face, and I'll turn around and give a thumbs up and have a laugh. And then, good on you, mate. That was a good one. I'll pay that.
Yeah, fair enough. Now, in a footy team, there's usually larrikins and pranksters. I'm assuming maybe in the referee ranks there was larrikins and pranksters in the ranks.
There was, there absolutely was.
Who was it? What did they get up to?
Well, if you were talking to another referee from my era, they'd probably say that I was the prankster.
Okay.
And did the little deeds and everything.
What did you get up to?
Well, I've hid blokes' socks. So they're putting their gear on and they can't find their socks, their whistles. My favourite was in cold winter's nights at Leichhardt, Lidcombe Oval, when we'd finish our training on a Wednesday night. It was the old days where the showers were, the shower heads were all together. There was no cubicles.
Yep.
So you might have 6 shower heads, so you're all standing side by side. And I'd jump under the shower and just shower myself, and then the blokes would be waiting to get in. And when they go jump in, it was always cold. Always had a cold shower. So they'd jump in freezing cold after a training session to a cold shower. And you always got them. You always get them. So little pranks like that. And then there's others, obviously, that we don't talk about.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. Yeah, what happens on tour stays on tour, or in private. Yeah, that's fair enough. Now, I've heard you talk about this before on other podcasts and videos about your nickname at the time, Hollywood Harrigan, and the fact that you don't like it. Was that around the time that you grew the long locks?
I did have the long hair, but Hollywood was always Greg Hartley.
Yeah.
And I always thought, there's only one Hollywood. That was Greg Hartley. He played that to a T. He had all the moves on the field, stumbling, the backward rolls and all that sort of thing. Hollywood. Rebecca Wilson gave me that nickname.
Yeah.
And when she gave it to me, I just said, Beck, that's not my name. That's Greg Hartley. Come up with something original. And she just said, oh, shut up, Hollywood. And it stuck. And so, people call me Hollywood and you go, oh, okay. But really, Greg Hartley for me is the Hollywood.
It's probably a bit like Clint Gutherson and the King nickname and Wally Lewis.
Yeah.
There's only one King.
There's only one King. There's only one Hollywood.
That's it. Your career spanned a few different rule changes, the 5 metres, 10 metres. Is there any rules that you'd like to see come back into the game that maybe you refereed in your career?
Yeah, I would. I refereed when the ball had to be put in the middle of the scrum, hookers' feet back, all that sort of thing. I don't want to see that come back because it was a blight on the game with the amount of scrum penalties and the stoppages. And we've seen over the years and the way the game's evolved, we want a free-flowing game. Yep. And that's how I used to love refereeing. That's why I had minimal penalties and everything. It was just let the game flow, earn the respect of the players, work hard, get them to work with you, and you can put the whistle in the pocket and let it flow. And I love doing that. But the scrum penalties and the marker penalty, where the marker used to be able to strike for the ball, Mario Fink used to always lean across and not be straight and you'd be penalising him. And they're not going to come back. But what I would like to see come back is none of this winger or a fullback or a halfback packing into the scrum.
Yeah.
If you're a prop, you're packing in the prop position. If you're a hooker, you'll be in the middle of the props. If you're a second rower, you in there. And I want them to bind so that they're not just standing there with their hands on each other with their heads up looking at the referee. Pack a scrum like a scrum, get it in there, and then stick it in behind the hooker's feet and play. I'll not roll it down the back, but actually put it in behind his feet. And then by the time that ball comes out, the forwards are all tight in that scrum, and then they've got a break. And it just gives that backs that little bit of an opportunity to play something. And then when they get tackled, the forwards are still trying to race over there to get there when they might have something next quick tackle.
Yep.
So I would like to see that happen. And if you're a halfback and that, you aren't putting your head in that scrum. No way. That's what I.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you on that one. Yep.
Having a little video trouble.
Got me?
I've lost you.
Got me?
Yeah, I got you again.
Okay.
Yeah, a little bit of audio trouble there, Troy. Gotcha.
Yeah. This is Western Suburbs here, I think.
You got to pay the Zoom bill.
Yeah, that's it. Now, players usually keep special jerseys or boots or shorts or whatever merchandise they get. Have you kept some special mementos? Yeah, Troy, we lost it again, mate. Lost the audio. Okay. Got me?
Yeah, got you now.
Okay. Well,
I heard you said something about players keep a jersey or something like that.
Yeah, so players usually keep special mementos like jerseys or shorts or boots or whatever. Have you kept some special mementos from your refereeing career?
I got all the grand final balls, state of origin balls, test match balls.
Wow.
The ball, you used to get 3 balls per game. So you had one each on either sideline, one in the middle. I used to mark the ball with a pen just on the edge of the corner, on the point of the ball. And I would use that ball for the kickoff in both halves.
Okay.
And at the end of the game, when we had to go and pick up the balls, that's the ball I grabbed every time.
Ah, nice.
And so I've got those balls and they're still at their marks, and I've got them all in bags, identified. And then I've got my grand final jerseys as well. A couple of State of Origin jerseys, a couple of tests. Not all of them.
Yep.
I've given some away to charities over the years, but yeah, I've still got some.
Ah, nice. Well, we'll wrap things up with the personality questions brought to you by Frankie and Co, makers of great tasting coffee and cakes. Taking out Oztag and rugby league, is there a favourite sport that you enjoy watching or playing?
Watching, I love gridiron.
Okay.
I'm a Miami Dolphins fan.
Yeah.
Going back to the days of Dan Marino.
Yeah, well, I think the NFL is just about to kick off, I think, next week. So good luck to them.
It is, yep.
What's your specialty dish in the kitchen or on the barbecue?
That I can cook. I do a pretty good lasagna.
Okay.
Probably my mum taught me how to do a lasagna, and I don't mind doing a ribeye on the barbecue with a bit of asparagus and broccolini.
Ah, nice. Now, who is the famous person you would like to meet in the world and have a Jack's Pale Ale or a Frankie and Co coffee with and a chat?
Who would it be? I've always liked acting, so I probably would like to sit down with Mel Gibson,
Okay.
Australian, or Russell Crowe.
Yep.
I have met Russell Crowe and said g'day to him, but I've never sat down and had a beer with the bloke.
Yep.
And another one, probably out of the blue, I'd love to sit down with old John Laws.
Okay. Yeah, he'd have
King
some
of the radio.
stories. Yeah. Well, he'd have some stories for sure.
Still listen to him today.
Okay. Yeah. No, champion. What is the best piece of advice you've been given and who gave it to you?
It probably come from my dad or my parents, and that was commitment and dedication.
Yep.
If you're going to do something, put your head to it, dedicate yourself to it and commit, and away you go.
Yep. No, that's pretty fair advice.
No, probably the other one, Troy, that's good for everybody else out there and this was from my dad. My dad always said, before you say anything to anybody, put yourself in their shoes and ask yourself the question, would you like that said or done to you? And if the answer is no, never do it. And I'll pass that on to all my kids as well.
Yeah, no, that's good advice. Yep, definitely. Now, you already answered that question before about wanting to be a pilot. Let's do a twist on it. Once these COVID lockdowns end, where's the first place you'd like to travel to for a holiday?
I've never been to Italy, so I'd like to go there, but my favourite is Ireland, Harrigan, Irish. I love Guinness. And we were supposed to have in August 2021, so just gone, we were supposed to be over in Limerick for the Oztag World Cup.
Oh, okay.
And we're going back there in 2023, so I'm looking forward to going back there.
Okay.
Back to Ireland.
Yeah. Now, you also mentioned during the chat as well that Sweet Home Alabama was your favourite song. What about your favourite band or solo artists to listen to other than Sweet Home Alabama?
Yeah, I've got to say, favourite band's Kiss. I have not missed a Kiss concert since they came out here at the showground in 1980.
Okay, yeah,
and
wow.
In 2019, Paul Stanley got crook and they had to abandon the rest of their New Zealand Australian tour. Rescheduled to come back November this year, which has just been postponed to the 1st of April, 2022.
Yeah.
So hopefully the boys will still be able to handle the show, because that's, if you've never been to a Kiss concert, that is one hell of a show.
What's your favourite Kiss song?
I Was Made for Loving You and Beth.
Okay. Yeah, classics. Well, Bill Harrigan, thank you very much for your time and your chat today. I really appreciate it. I'm sure the fans will love it too. It's been great to chat to the first referee I've had on the podcast, and one that I watched his whole career. I hope one day to catch up and say hi. So, Bill Harrigan, thank you very much for your time on the Paracay podcast today.
All the best, Troy. Thank you.